Please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us out. And of course, if you have any questions, comment below, and we will answer you as soon as we can. Welcome to this video in our series on O-level economics. In today's lesson, we will be learning how to solve paper 2. If you haven't seen our previous videos, click on the card above. Hi guys. Today we will solve the 2281 O-level economics paper. We will be working on paper 2. This paper is from 2020 and is downloadable in the link below. Opening the paper, we come to section A, question 1. This question you must do. The first part is data about a certain situation, in this case, Vietnam's growing population and economy. They have given us some tables to find some data from, and some text detailing the situation. Excellent, they have given us all the information. We just have to find it. The first question. Calculate Vietnam's GDP per head in 2017. Cool. GDP per head, or per capita, is GDP divided by the population. We can see that the GDP in 2017 was $662.4 billion, and the population was 96 million people. So the answer is 662.4 billion divided by 96 million. Make sure to get the units correct. The answer is $6,900. Don't forget to include the dollar sign. Next question. Identify 2 rewards to factors of production. A knowledge question. We can remember from the factors of production that wages are the reward for labor, and that profit is the reward for an entrepreneur. So we have our answer, wages and profit. Remember to score the 2 marks, you must have both answers. Next question. Explain what happened to Vietnam's foreign exchange rate between 2010 and 2017. Okay, explain, or give details. Looking at the first table, we can see the value for the dong. Vietnam's currency went from $1 equaling 19,500 dong, to $1 be equal to 22,780 dong. So the currency has fallen or depreciated. Therefore, more dong had to be given to buy $1. Remember the question asked to explain, so just saying it fell would not get you the 2 marks. Next. Explain 2 benefits an economy may gain from having a young labor force. Again, explain, so we have to give details. Any one of these will get you the 2 marks. Maybe more flexible, being able to switch to doing different tasks. Maybe more mobile and able to switch from one job to another or from one place to another place. Maybe more up to date with advances in technology and more productive or able to use advanced technology. The next question is analyze. This is all about explaining the impact of a problem or an issue. Analyze why Vietnam's budget deficit may decline in the future. Okay, so the deficit is basically too much spending and not enough tax income for the government. So, we need to mention things that would affect government spending, or tax income, or both. An example would be: high economic growth will raise incomes and wages, and there could be higher profits. This would mean more revenue from direct taxes. Higher incomes are likely to result in more spending, which will mean more revenue from indirect taxes. I have decided to talk about tax income. A 1 is where I would award a mark. The questions are slowly getting harder. Analyze the relationship between government spending on education and the percentage of the labor force employed in the tertiary sector. Again, this is an analysis question. Generally, the countries with the highest percent spending on education have the highest percentage employed in the tertiary sector and vice versa. An example would be Norway, which has the highest percent spending and the highest percent employed in the tertiary sector. Bangladesh has the lowest percent spending and the lowest percent employed in the tertiary sector. The main exception is Vietnam, which has the second highest percent spending but the lowest percent employed in the tertiary sector. There may be a time lag in this case, as it takes time for people to complete tertiary education. It is the expected relationship, as some tertiary jobs require high skills, and countries that can afford to devote a high percentage of resources to education may have achieved a relatively high level of development. A higher percent spent will create jobs in education. Moving on. Discuss whether or not an increase in competition is likely to benefit Vietnamese consumers. Discuss means to apply it to this situation. An example answer would be as follows. Prices may be reduced to attract more consumers, making them more affordable to consumers. The choice will be increased in terms of sellers and possibly in terms of a greater range of products. Quality may rise with pressure being put on producers to produce good products to attract consumers. Producers may respond more fully to changes in consumer demand. But wait, if we discuss, we need to include the reasons why not as well. The pros and cons of a situation. In this case, the cons. Firms may be smaller, less able to take advantage of economies of scale, so prices may be higher. Firms may have less profit and so spend less improving the quality of the product. Some firms may be multinational companies, less concerned about causing external costs. You will get a maximum of 4 marks for the pros, and a maximum of 4 marks for the cons. So you must include both to receive the full marks. Finally, the last question in section A. Discuss whether or not the increase in borrowing is likely to have caused inflation in Vietnam in 2017. Okay, another discussion. This means to apply it to the situation and discuss the pros and cons. For the pros, higher consumer demand and investment will increase total aggregate demand. Higher total demand may cause demand pull inflation and cause producers to raise prices. Government spending may rise, further adding to total aggregate demand. The economy has very low unemployment or full employment, making it difficult for supply to respond to higher demand. Tax rates may rise, which may increase costs of production, causing cost push inflation. Remember, you will only get 4 marks for the pros. A mark would be each point made. Now for the cons. Higher investment may reduce costs of production, lowering cost push inflation. Higher consumer spending may enable firms to grow and take greater advantage of economies of scale. Increased education may raise labor productivity, reduce costs of production, and lower cost push inflation. Privatized firms may be more efficient. More competition may reduce price rises. Now we have finished section A, and have all the marks so far. Okay, that brings us to section B. You will be given 4 questions in this section. From these 4 questions, you get to choose 3 to do. Do not do more than 3. You will just be wasting time and the examiner will only mark 3 questions. I have had students in the past do more than 3 questions, because they thought they would get marks for every question they answer. Sorry guys, it doesn't work like that. I will be doing all the questions, but I would suggest to students to go with their strengths. Let's start with question 2 of section B. The first question is: state 2 benefits a country may gain from immigration. They just want you to list 2 benefits. You would get 1 mark each for 2 from this list. Larger labor force, reduced dependency rate, higher demand, higher tax revenue, more skilled workers, greater utilization of resources. Next, explain 2 consequences of deflation. Remember, explain, so we have to give details. Because this is 4 marks, we can imagine how it will be marked. 1 mark for each thing that is a consequence of deflation, and 1 mark for explaining it. Output may fall, due to lower demand. So firms will cut back production. Unemployment may rise as fewer workers will be needed to produce fewer goods and services. Economic growth may decline, or a recession may occur due to lower total aggregate demand. Output may rise. This could be due to lower costs of production or advances in technology. Exports may increase if domestic products have become more price competitive. Next question. Analyze why children from low-income families may have low incomes as adults. Remember, the keyword here is analyze. Form any of the following points into a coherent analysis. Remember, we are looking for 6 marks here, so basically 6 ideas. Likely to receive less education. Likely to have lower quality healthcare. Nutrition is likely to be poor. Likely to gain fewer qualifications and skills. Be less productive. Have fewer employment opportunities. May be in low-paid jobs. May be unemployed. Last part for question 2. Discuss whether or not a national minimum wage will reduce poverty. There is much to say here. But, remember, this is a discussion. So as such, we need to go through the pros and cons. To be in the top band of 6 to 8 marks, here's what is expected. A reasoned discussion that accurately examines both sides of the economic argument, making use of economic information and clear and logical analysis to evaluate economic issues and situations. One side of the argument may have more depth than the other, but overall, both sides of the argument are considered and developed. There is a thoughtful evaluation of economic concepts, terminology, information, and data appropriate to the question. The discussion may also point out the possible uncertainties of alternative decisions and outcomes. Plus, it would be really good to include a diagram here. In this case, a supply-demand diagram showing a price floor that would be the minimum wage. So, here is a list of ideas to include for pros. If it is set above the equilibrium level, it will raise the pay of the low-paid. It may reduce relative poverty by reducing the gap between high and low-income earners. It may reduce absolute poverty by enabling low-paid workers greater access to basic necessities. It may raise employment if it motivates workers and raises productivity. It may raise employment if it increases total aggregate demand. Moving on to question 3. There is a smaller proportion of large firms in Africa than in Asia. The two African countries with the largest firms are Nigeria and South Africa. These two countries' firms have more capital goods than most other African countries' firms. Firms in South Africa produce a range of products including gold and petrochemicals. In recent years, a number of African firms have developed into multinational companies, producing mainly in other African countries. First question. Define a capital good. This is a straight-up definition. A capital good is a human-made good used in production or used to produce other goods and services. Next, explain 2 challenges facing small firms. Remember the rules for explaining when you answer this question. You need 4 marks for this question. So pick 2 of these to complete the answer. Lack of finance or difficulty raising finance. Banks may be more reluctant to lend to small firms. They may not be able to take advantage of economies of scale or may have a higher average cost. Not well known, and thus difficult to attract consumers. May face fierce competition from large firms which may lower their prices or they may have to spend more on advertising. Risk of failure due to inexperience of owners. Next, analyze, using a demand and supply diagram, how a rise in income may affect the market for gold. Remember the general rule for analysis here, but for the love of all things economic, the question asked for a demand and supply diagram. So you better get drawing. You will get a mark for each of the following. Axis correctly labeled, for example, price and quantity or P and Q. Demand and supply curves correctly labeled. The demand curve shifted to the right. Equilibriums shown by lines P1, P2, and Q1, Q2 or marking the equilibrium points E1 and E2. You will get 2 marks for logical analysis. Include these points. An increase in income will increase people's ability to buy gold or raise purchasing power. The price will rise and the quantity traded will rise. Next question, the last for this question. Discuss whether or not MNCs increase production and productivity in their host countries. Remember, discuss is presenting the pros and cons. So, again, why they might. May have a high demand for their products, may create demand for raw materials from domestic firms, may bring new technology and working practices into the countries, may train workers, may pay higher wages which may motivate workers. Why it might not. May drive some domestic firms of business, may deplete natural resources, reducing output in the future, may have long or unsociable working hours, may generate external costs including pollution which may reduce the health of workers. You will be limited to 3 to 5 marks if only production or productivity is considered. Moving on to question 4. Economists are uncertain about the future United States macroeconomic performance. For instance, in recent years, U.S. unemployment has fallen while the deficit on the current account of the balance of payments has fluctuated. Whether its current account deficit will rise or fall in the future may be affected by proposed tax cuts. Some economists suggest that the U.S. government should not be concerned about the country's current account deficit. The first question, define macroeconomics. Okay, this is just a straight-up knowledge question. The branch of economics concerned with large-scale or general economic factors, such as interest rates and national productivity. Next, explain 2 consequences to firms of unemployment. General rules for explanations apply here. You need 4 marks from this question. So choose 2 of these to talk about. Lower demand will cause lower revenue. Lower ability to take advantage of economies of scale due to lower output. Lower average costs because of lower wages. Less risk of industrial action as workers are afraid of losing their jobs. Greater ease of recruiting workers, reducing recruitment costs. The next question: analyze how tax cuts could increase exports. Okay, I don't think we need to restate about analysis. A coherent analysis might include the following. Lower indirect taxes could reduce costs of production. This could encourage investment, the use of more advanced technology, and more efficient methods of production. This could lower prices or make prices more internationally competitive. Lower income tax could motivate workers, raising productivity, lower prices of exports, and raise the quality of exports. Lower taxes in other countries, for example, a lower tariff will encourage foreigners to purchase more exports. Next question. Discuss whether or not a current account deficit on its balance of payments harms an economy. So, again, we will be using pros and cons. So, first, the pros. Income or demand is leaving the economy. Employment will be lower than it could be. It may put downward pressure on the exchange rate. The country will get into debt. Other countries may not be willing to lend to it or invest in the country. Now the cons. Deficit may be low or in the short term. Enables the country to consume more than it produces. Imports of raw materials and capital goods will increase output in the future. On to the last question of the exam. I have already done 3, which is the total amount you need to do. Australian firms have been praised for introducing new technology. The actions of some of these firms, however, cause market failure. The Australian government uses subsidies, among other policies, to reduce market failure. Government spending is used both to improve the performance of individual markets and the macroeconomy. The Australian government increased its spending in 2017, in part to reduce unemployment. First question, state 2 objectives of firms. Again, this is a knowledge question. 1 mark each for 2 in total from this list. Survival, social welfare, profit maximization and growth. Next question, explain how a subsidy can correct market failure. A logical explanation might include the following. Up to 4 marks. Remember, the how, and then the explanation. A payment to increase production and lower the price of goods. It can increase consumption of merit goods or products with positive externalities which are underconsumed if left to market forces. You can pay money to private sector firms to produce public goods that would not be produced if left to market forces. Next question, analyze, using a production possibility curve diagram, the effect of advances in technology on an economy. Remember, as well as the general analysis here, you must draw a diagram. You get 1 mark for each of the following. Axes are correctly drawn. The initial curve is drawn as a curve or a downward sloping line to the axis. The new curve is drawn as a curve or a downward sloping line to the axis. Shift to the right indicated by arrow or lettering. Your analysis includes the following. Advances in technology raise the quality of capital. Increases in productive capacity. Now on to the last question for today. Discuss whether or not an increase in government spending will reduce unemployment. Okay, on to the pros and cons. First, the pros. It may raise total aggregate demand, encouraging firms to hire more workers. It may be spent on education, which may increase people's skills. It may be spent on healthcare, which may make people fitter and more employable. It may be spent on subsidies to firms, which will encourage them to increase output and take on more workers. Now for the cons. If spent on unemployment benefits, it may encourage some people to leave their jobs. If there is full employment, it will just cause inflation. Spending on education may be ineffective, for example, develop the wrong skills. Higher total aggregate demand may encourage firms to use more capital goods rather than labor. Thank you for watching our video. Please like, subscribe and share. And comment below so we can clarify things for you.